the traitor is revealed, apparently. And the reason I say apparently is just because you kind of got to get ready for the possibility that something happens and the author overwrites, or the author like says something like, oh no, she's not actually the traitor, she's just looking at the traitor, or something stupid like that. The author has done cheap things before. He has! Why did you believe him? Oh, you idiot. I think it's relatively safe to say that she's a traitor. It wasn't! It wasn't! Maybe there are more than one traitor. And it's still good thought. I'm liking the idea, and honestly, to let you know, when I first saw the traitor reveal, my first words were lame. Still pretty lame, only for different reasons now, but... Aw, man! Hey, everybody! It's Tripl-L, here to talk about My Hero Academia. What chapter are we on? 336, maybe? Potentially? 337? 336. Sorry. I had the page ready, but I just, you know, I always get the numbers mixed up. Anyway, hey everybody. Alright, so, last week. What a time. What a time. Yeah, you know, I really don't know. I really don't know what I was thinking. Why would I believe in this guy? Really? Like, I'm the one that always says, don't trust the cliffhangers. Why would I think that now, at the most critical moment, why would I think that he would stop being cheap? Really? Like, why would I believe that? This is kind of like, you know what? I'm not going to go there. I was going to make a comparison, but if I did make that comparison, it's going to be extremely, like it would be extremely of ill taste, especially for what this is. But yeah, no, man. This guy actually went in there and actually did something entirely nonsensical. Now, to talk about it, I got to be fair. There are two ways to talk about this situation that has unfolded, and that is from the entertainment perspective, of course, and then the critical perspective. And there are, like, the stuff that has occurred here has different levels of value in the two perspectives. All right, so let's start with the critical one, because the critical one's always the most fun one. This is stupid. This is extremely stupid. And I don't mean chapter 336. I mean 335's lead up. There's no way around this. This is cheap. This is as cheap, a little bit less cheaper than the whole Kurogiri situation of being shown Kurogiri among prisoners and then being like, oh, yo, bro, you shouldn't have assumed he was actually a central hospital the entire cheapest thing we've seen in a manga thus far. But when you look at the situation, critically, it's just incredibly insane. I mean, just put these pages side by side. There's no continuity. There's no follow-through. This looks like something that an insane person puts together. If Hero Academia was a less popular series, people would be calling this out. If this was written in written word, what he did here, if you were to transcribe this, this would look incredibly schizophrenic. When you're looking at the situation, and let's go back to chapter 335, because really this is what happens with the author every time he does this. Every time he makes a stupid cliffhanger, it doesn't impact the chapter that comes after it. It makes the chapter that came before it incredibly stupid. So, let's look at this from the perspective of what the story is ultimately trying to say. If you're reading this story in a volume collection, this looks insane. You have a situation where All For One is talking about, yo, Dobby, you suck. And then you have this whole little thing where there is a light in the distance. Alright? That light is also the same symbol that the author has used for search. As far as I'm concerned, this is search. Right? You have many things going on here. All For One is setting up, yo, I have a friend. Also, you suck, Dobby. You have the light, then you have Shigaraki's eye. What is the point of Shigaraki's eye? Oh, that must be to be saying, oh, yo, I'm looking for this person. I'm searching for the person who's related to the conversation that we're having. We go off into the distance, looking at that light. UA is at the center of the panel. What does that imply? It implies that UA is the focal point. It implies that the main UA building is the focal point, not the forest. Because when you look at the panels, it goes over the forest and closer to the UA building. You go into the UA building, and then you have Toru with friends to spare. So, what is the chapter ultimately telling you? It is telling you, oh, Toru is related to this person and Shigaraki is looking at Toru. But then you go into chapter 336. And 336 is like, bruh, I never said that Toru was a traitor. Like, this is just what the author always does. I never said, okay, you didn't say it verbally, but you're an artist. You're using pictures to communicate an idea. I'm sorry. Any smart person can see that you're being extremely weaselly. So, what was the point of Shigaraki looking at Toru? Because at this point, this just looks incredibly schizophrenic. And mind you, he's going to say, oh, he was never looking at Toru. Oh, no, come on, no. The entire thing is incredibly cheap. And to quote White Despair on this, White Despair made the really funny point of, he's talking about how he has friends to spare, but we are about to see the person who is about to go and expose his friend, one of his friends to spare, or I guess 3 of his friends to spare when you count Aoyama's family. It was an incredible bait and switch, and it is nonsensical, and when in the context of 336, it makes this entire part, again, look extremely insane. It doesn't make sense. It only makes sense in the perspective of a weekly manga where people are living week to week, which brings in the entertainment perspective. I gotta tell you, man, I love the balls on this guy. Oh my gosh. Look, listen. There's not many people who can create a situation where so many people look stupid from one week to the other. And I gotta tell you, me personally, I am nourished. My soul just, I feel like I could live 25 years past my 100th birthday. Just from all of this that happened in this week. Never have you seen real-time people just getting wrecked metaphorically. Never have you seen so many people's biases just put out there in the open. I feel pretty okay. Like, yeah, you know, I feel like I'll never trust this guy again. And really, I shouldn't. I feel like I'll never trust him again. But, on the other hand, you don't get the spectacle that you got last week from this guy. I'm really happy I gave myself a lot of room to be wrong here. I was very careful with my words. But the whole thing was just amazing. If I get to my 125th birthday, whoever's around, I don't know, I will let them know that it's all thanks to this one Japanese guy that one time did this really crazy thing for his little manga and just made my week. It was amazing. I love that. You know, when it comes down to it, I'm also the kind of manga reviewer that loves the reactions people have to the manga they're reading. This was an incredible time. Part of the fun for manga for me is seeing how other people are reacting to stuff. So from an entirely entertainment perspective, I am really enjoying it. I love it. I think this was amazing. And I also just love seeing people get egg on their face. Mind you, Toru might still be a traitor. But yeah, coming back to this, yeah, I love people seeing egg on their face. I love how there were so many people saying like, oh, apologize to all the other people you were suspecting. It's like, that doesn't make sense. The same kind of thought, the same species of thought you had to engage in to get to any of your other traitor picks is the same kind of species of thought that you had to do to get Toru. In other words, you had to be suspecting of children. So, just because someone was wrong doesn't mean that they are somehow lesser than the person that was right. I mean, you all were suspecting children. So, you know, it's just really interesting to see that just get blown up. If people were just a little bit more chill, they could probably save face a little bit here, but it was just so good. So good. Also, I love that people last week were also freaking out about the fact that you could see Toru's silhouette. And you guys remember me. I said, like, this is just something that the author is doing for the visual niceness of it. And that looks like what it is. It's just like, the guy knows what he has to do to create a spectacle. So overall, my opinions on this, and we'll actually, we have so much to get to on this one. But my opinions on this is that this is incredibly cheap. This is par for the course for this author. This guy isn't respectable when it comes to maintaining the integrity of his series. His series is more dictated by entertainment than it is logical sense. And again, chapter 336 makes 335 incredibly stupid because the things that you have to do to justify 335 in the context of 336 are just mental gymnastics that only really works in the case of manga because the author thinks he can get away with gaslighting his fans and telling them, hey, no, I never said that she was a traitor. You guys assumed. Yeah, screw you. You tilted the game in your favor. But mind you, on the flip side, he's chasing entertainment. And in terms of the entertainment, this was really good. This was really fun. It's just, unfortunately, these kind of things do compromise the integrity of the series. And this leads me to another point. When, you know, I said that last week, he might have a situation where, no, she's not actually a traitor. She's just watching the traitor. When I said that, I didn't say that because the logic of the story told me that. The logic of the story says that she's the traitor. I said that because I don't trust the author. The author has time and time again said, implicitly in his manga, that we shouldn't trust anything that we're seeing because he might recontextualize it. Like, the big example is the whole Kurogiri situation. I would sooner believe that he forgot about Kurogiri and then had to fix it later on to make it look like this was whatever, like Kurogiri was actually always in Central Hospital. And the reason I feel pretty confident saying that is thankfully because the author has gone on record on things that he's forgotten before. We know he messed up Toya's timeline, and if this is the kind of guy that's messing up Toya's timeline, which is critical to the character, then I have no real reason to believe that he hasn't messed up other things to similar degrees. Other mistake he had was forgetting Skeptic was around with the villains during the Gigantomachia stuff. So this isn't a person who is very good at remembering things, but thankfully I don't want to rag on that too much, because I think it's actually good that authors admit where they made mistakes, because that actually tells us a lot about the writing process, and it would actually be pretty cool if we had more authors admitting what parts they weren't too sure about. It would be nice to have that level of transparency, so I do not want to hit that there, but I do want to use that to inform why this author is not very trustworthy in general, and why the integrity of Hero Academia is pretty botched. Now, moving on. In terms of traitor reveals, last week we assumed that Toru was a traitor reveal, and based on that, Toru was a pretty, not like the best traitor reveal, probably the worst traitor reveal. Oh, I don't want to say the worst, like it's serviceable, right? Serviceable. It's a serviceable traitor reveal. But then we go into this chapter, and if you recall last week, I mentioned that one of the cool things, or like one cool way of having a traitor reveal would be having characters, you know, following up clues and kind of figuring it out. Now, when it comes to the Aoyama traitor reveal, well, I don't really care about Aoyama crying so much, because like for me it was borderline goofy. I think I would have taken it better if it was One Piece doing this kind of stuff, because Oda's much better at the goofy expressions when it comes to their crying. I don't really care for the Aoyama panels and his suffering there. Like, I care about it intellectually, but it didn't really hit me. Just like his face just doesn't work for me. But I loved that you had a character leading this. I love that you have Toru saying like, "Yo, you are the guy. Like, you are sad. I saw this in you. I'm following up on it." I like that. That was really cool, because that made the characters actually feel like they had something to do here. So innately, this is an incredibly stronger traitor reveal, just because of the way this happened. Now, when you take into perspective 335, you also have to kind of look at that there. Because of 335's bait and switch, in terms of the spectacle of it, he definitely got some more points for the spectacle. So last week we were in a situation where the reveal itself was compromised, but we were looking for the follow-through. Now the follow-through has happened, and we now know, well, it might not be a traitor, but instead that was part of the reveal for the Aoyama reveal. So ultimately, this reveal is stronger than the previous reveal, and in terms of the spectacle, it does come in with a very unique case that not a lot of other manga can make. And of course, the dubious thing again with 336 and 335 is that it's incredibly cheap. It sacrifices integrity to maximize entertainment value. So when it comes down to Hero Academia, what it really comes down to is like, and I've said this multiple times, if you're following Hero Academia week to week, if your highlights of the week are reading manga in general from Shonen Jump, this is probably going to be a really good week. If you are reading this as a coherent story, Hero Academia isn't coherent, so let's just throw that away. It's not coherent. It hasn't been coherent in a long time. Hero Academia is too affected by what the author thinks he has to maintain, what the author thinks he has to do to maintain the pace. So, you know, last week's traitor reveal, I thought it was going to be nothing worthwhile. But now Hero Academia has gone and made this actually something worth talking about in the future. It's actually made a pretty good case study in the future. I do hope no other author really picks up on these habits though, because I don't think these are good habits to maintain. Any hoosers, that's my first general notes on the traitor reveal. Pretty fun stuff. And again, My soul is enriched. I can go on to live 25 more years. Now, there are a lot of things. Yeah, there's one more general note. It's about the translations. The translation for the Viz chapter and the fan translations are very different. And there are some critical points that come out. Like some parts, the Viz chapter feels like it tightens it up. But then there's like other things that the Viz chapter kind of opens up, which will be concerning. So, I'm 16 minutes in. Let's get into this. This is probably going to be a 40-minute video. Alright, the beginning page is just showing us that Bakugo's doing stuff. He's got cluster. Honestly, I don't care about the powers anymore. The author can do whatever he wants, but it's really more variations of things go boom. And really, when it comes to Bakugo, like we were talking about this on the live stream, explosions don't matter in Hero Academia. Why should I care about Bakugo's power-ups? They're just explosions. Like the author can just, the author could draw the same 2 explosions and say that one's at the beginning of the series and one's at the end of the series, and I would believe it. Like, there would be no real difference. I'm sure the author will give the context during the situation, say, like, why it's so much more different. But honestly, with Bakugo's powers, I don't care anymore. You know what? I'm becoming a little bit more cynical. Now, what I do appreciate is just the justification for the winter costume. I thought it was something like this, so I really appreciate that. Then we get told that Todoroki is trying something different. So that's the author kind of framing that. And it's like, oh yeah, you know, like it's more of controlling both sides of the body. This time, controlling them so well that I use them at the same time. Freaking groundbreaking. I'd rather see Shoto doing what Bakugo is doing and following up on using explosive firepower. Because, like, to make his body unburnable, just make explosive ice power. That's what I would say. But like whatever, like let the author do whatever he wants to with Shoto. I think he's run his course with Shoto as well. I think Shoto is one of those people that you don't really see the visuals of him mastering homeostasis. Rather, you get told, "Oh yeah, you can't burn my body now anymore," and the visuals are largely the same. I don't think the author is very good at that either. So there were a lot of jokes this week about Shoto. Yeah, I think he's kind of run his course on that kid. We move on, and we have a very interesting panel. They're finally talking about Gigantomachia. So I like the idea that they held Gigantomachia down where they initially caught him. I think that's really cool. I think it's actually interesting. Like, think about this. They went and All For One broke people out of jail immediately, right? Isn't it kind of funny that they were able to build a containment facility for Gigantomachia? Isn't this a giant target? I mean, I assume that they have some heroes like protecting the area, but I know it's not the top 3 heroes. I know it's not the top 5 heroes. I'm pretty sure it's not the top 10 heroes. So that is strange to me. It is strange that they were able to build a containment area, that they were able to transport all the materials that they needed, that they were able to get all the personnel together, they were able to get personnel to leave their families to come to this containment area. I find it incredibly amazing that in a time where everyone's running for shelter and we see the police overworked, they were able to set up a containment area. I'm not sure that works within the logistics of the situation. I think it's incredibly weird when you think about it, and I would love the justification of we had a lot of heroes protecting this area, but then I really want to know which heroes you are using to protect this area, because we have a lot of inmates running around. Anyway, going back to Kaminari and Mineta, you can see that Mineta is just pulling out grapes, so he's just raising his maximum limits. And we have Kaminari just pretty much narrating for us what's going on with the situation. Then we go into a nice segment of Bakugo explaining, like, well, hey guys, well, this is what's actually going on. And I do think this is probably the author like setting up the stage here. So Bakugo's countering why we won't be able to make quick work of the villains. First off, they've never actually been able to find All For One. All For One appears. He doesn't get found. Then you have Momo pointing out that Shigaraki's body wasn't complete last time, so pretty much just saying, well, Shigaraki's probably going to come back stronger than we've ever seen him before, so that's going to be pretty tough if we catch him when he's completed. And then on the third point, Bakugo points out that the villains have the initiative, which is a consequence of the first point being that they can't find them. So if you actually look at it, Reason 2 is the most divorced of the reasonings. But that makes sense because the author had Momo come in and be the one to give it. So it actually makes sense that there is some disjointment between the reasonings. So the next little bit of dialogue is Bakugo saying even if he might have lost that search quirk in the battle against Yue. So he's bringing up search because Bakugo knows what search really means for this fight. It means that they can all be monitored. And just very quickly, for those that are wondering, you know, if you go back on the wiki just very quickly, you can look at where the thing comes from, but search doesn't have a distance limit on it, and search allows a person to monitor and observe. When it comes to Shigaraki and All For One, they are able to really monitor the situation at UA. Because we've never had the limits of search actually explained to us other than the 100-person limit, we really don't know to what degree of detail the kids are able to be spied on, essentially. Anyway, the reason search is important, and the reason that Bakugo is pointing it out, is because search offers an incredible level of initiative for the villains. Anyway, Bakugo rationalizes that having sheer numbers will give us a chance. Not really. In Hero Academia, numbers never matter, right? So this reasoning is just the author saying it, but this is entirely nonsensical. In Hero Academia, 3 kids with no experience can take out 20 villains with just overpowered quirks. In Hero Academia, 1 guy using hit and run tactics can survive against like at least 20 villains. In Hero Academia, 1 guy with explosion powers and another guy that can make himself hard can take out a bunch of villains without really breaking a sweat. No, numbers have never mattered in Hero Academia. It's insane to say otherwise. And also, just to like really point out, like the author wants to point your eyes in a particular direction, but honestly, if Shigaraki wanted to, he could make the heroes really suffer. All they have to do is make Shigaraki go to places very far away from UA and just have him decay cities. Decay like all the major cities in the various corners of Japan, and then have the heroes find out about it. And when they are like broken down emotionally and spiritually, just come in and deliver the final blow. Really, Shigaraki's decay can ruin all of Japan before the heroes even get out of bed. But of course, All For One isn't that smart. So we're not going to see any kind of really aggressive play like that. Page 6 is a little bit concerning. Izuku's setting up that they have to rejoin the search, and then Izuku sets up that he needs to go for a quick stroll. So one thing that's incredibly important here with the stroll is that Izuku would have found Aoyama without Toru. What Toru offers here is that she hears the story. So this is a little bit of a trick from the author, because remember, time is the most manipulatable quantity in manga. If he has Izuku go a little bit earlier, Izuku hears the conversation, because Izuku's already going that direction. So what the author really does is that he plays with the time frame to make it look like, oh, like this was really valuable. It's a good thing that Toru was the one to be worried here, because she was able to hear that critical line before Izuku gets there. So a little bit of a trick. Anything that revolves around manipulating the timeline is always going to be a little bit of a trick. It's going to be the illusion of like this person was really valuable, but at the same time, when you're in this kind of situation, when you're at this stage, it's okay to manipulate the timeline. And I have to be very careful. This is why I call it a trick. Narrative tricks are good because they let you get to the spot that you want to without being too unfair. The reason I call it a trick is just because when you strip it all away and you look at the fundamental components of it, you can see like, okay, yeah, this was like a little bit like a magician performing a trick on stage. They control the timeline, they control how you're supposed to think about it, and that's how you get the final results. But good on the author for thinking to do it. That is really good. Anyway, we have another important bit of dialogue, and I do think Viz fixed this quite a bit from the fan translation. Because when Ida was talking about, you know, the relations between the hero corps and the evacuees have grown warmer, in the fan translation, it was like they were talking about going outside in general, like going out of UA, and it didn't make sense. But here it makes a lot more sense. Oh yeah, Izuku, you want to go on a stroll? Well, yeah, good thing that Uraraka did that, because now no one's going to really like bother you if you go on the stroll. So that's really good. And then you have Uraraka blushing. So people have also been wondering, like, when are Uraraka and Izuku going to talk? Logically, they could talk at any point, like really any point after Uraraka wakes up on the morning after whatever happened. They could talk, but the author's not going to do that. I said this back when we saw that Uraraka was sleeping. The author's not going to have Izuku and Uraraka organically talk until it's the most climactic moment, or until it's most dramatically appropriate. The author's not good at this. He's not good at timing these kind of things. He has to prove me wrong on this one. We'll have to see what he wants to do, but really, I don't expect any kind of good stuff between Izuku and Ochako until we are at climactic moments. especially Ochako, who has a habit of telling murderers about her love life. I don't think these kids are actually capable of talking normally, and I don't think he's actually capable of writing a organic relationship without the threat of danger behind it. So we'll have to see if he wants to do something. Another spot I could see Uraraka and Izuku talking is the night before the final action goes down, or the night before the final battle, because that's dramatically appropriate, right? So get ready. That's what he's going to do, probably. He's going to wait for dramatic approach. I don't think you're going to have any kind of casual thing. Like, it's not going to be a slice of life chapter where the two of them are just talking, having a nice time. Nah. This guy's going to wait for the dramatic appropriateness. So here's the concerning thing. Kaminari says, even with his back against the wall, All For One still got that grin on his face. This is incredibly concerning because how does all... It specifically got that grin on his face. How does Kaminari know about the grinning? The problem here is that the grin is a metaphor that's been created and attached to All For One. The one who really created it and strengthened it was Hawks. Why is Kaminari talking about the grin? Why? How does Kaminari know that he has that particular grin on his face? Now, mind you, this is where the wording gets kind of scary, but even on the fan translations, they have a similar idea going on, like All For One's going to keep laughing. How does Kaminari know that's the disposition of All For One? Now, you know, traitors, there might be many traitors, and actually this chapter confirms there are many traitors, but with the situation with Kaminari, it doesn't make sense that he's the one continuing the metaphor. Kaminari has never seen All For One's face. The only way you can really maybe explain it is if Izuku talked about the one time he saw All For One on the TV screen grinning. But that is an incredible leap on this situation. Either the author applied the metaphor not taking into consideration who was saying it, or Kaminari actually knows about All For One's grinning habits. But it doesn't make sense because Kaminari has no opportunity to ever see All For One grinning. Now, mind you, when you're having like these kind of metaphors going around, and you have a big story with a lot of people saying stuff, it's relatively easy to actually forget which characters are capable of observing a particular character trait. So keep that in mind. And again, for the traders, just keep in mind that there might be many traders. Now we go into Toru, and there's another trick that occurs here, and the author knows that there's another trick that occurs here, and I do appreciate that he is very I appreciate that he is self-aware, but it also points out, it also makes the trick obvious. Toru goes and says, ever since all the stuff in Gunga and Jakku, you've been down in the dumps. And then she goes, I mean, we all felt that way, but still. So the value of that line is specifically the author is saying, like, okay, yeah, I know that everyone that I drew was looking really sad, but this guy was sadder than everyone else. Now, what he did here in conjunction with Izuku is that he created a situation where the characters saw more than what the readers saw. Now, mind you, there are some readers that pointed out, like, Aoyama was the guy that was saying that maybe we should just leave it to the adults. So he was vocalizing like a little bit of pushback to the idea of going after Izuku. And then people like saying like he wasn't looking at the screen, but like Aoyama has not looked at the screen in other times, whatever. You know, I'm not gonna rag on the people that were right to be so paranoid about it, but like the reason Ochako traitor theory came up is also because Ochako pulled back when they were saying about going after Bakugo. So you see the problem here. Like once you start suspecting a student, like the same that kind of thought can be applied to everyone, and everything can be made to look suspicious. Like look, Toru was the victim of it if she's not a traitor. Or if she's not another traitor. Now, speaking of traitors, the issue now with Toru is that she is giving us an inner monologue. Once you start getting inner monologues, you now have to start playing the game of like, okay, if this person's a traitor, how can we make this into a situation where all the inner monologues are still coherent with the idea that this person is a traitor? With the stuff that we're getting for Toru, this turns into like, you're verging into the levels of insanity. Toru needs to be insane in order to justify her thoughts and still being a traitor. Something similar happens with Kaminari. Like if Kaminari is a traitor, Kaminari cares about Jiro. We saw that during the mansion raid. With Kaminari, you now have to get into, if Kaminari was a traitor, you have to get into a position where you're saying like, how can he like Jiro so much while still being the traitor? You kind of have to reconcile those two things. Anyway, the bottom of page 7 is where we get the good stuff. You don't have a choice. Another order's just come in from him. Don't worry, this is just like always. Even if they intercept the message, it's in code. They'll just think it's communication between civilians. Think about that. They think it's communication between civilians. A message is being sent through civilians that even if it's intercepted, they think it's communication between civilians. Now, what does that ultimately mean? How did the message get into Yue's walls? Did someone send a letter? That's impossible. Did someone phone call? Maybe. Maybe it was through a phone call. But this is the really questionable thing. There's no doubt about it. There are 3 traitors right now within the Yue walls. They are Aoyama and his parents. But depending on how that communication between civilians works, there might be more civilians in the chain, both inside and outside of Yue, passing the message along. Yue might be really screwed here because there might be all for one's blackmail victims within the grouping of the Yue evacuees. The big question here is, did the message travel by word of mouth or did it travel through a cell phone? If there's a digital means to this, it kind of limits how many things can be going. It kind of limits how many people may be involved, but just be ready. Next, they make an assumption. No security cameras will spot us in this place, right? It's fine. Yes, just fine. Now, if I am Yue and I have many robots who are capable of running around and, like, you know, spying on Izuku and Bakugo, and I have a forested area and I'm looking for traitors, I would most definitely put security cameras and security protocols within the forest. Because if I don't do that, then how the heck am I monitoring everyone? Also, another point, Aoyama has jumped balconies and done stuff outside of Izuku's balconies. He's looked like a weirdo, and Yue doesn't think that's suspicious. So I do kind of question how smart Yue is. If Yue doesn't have security cameras in the forest, the one spot where someone can go hide and conspire, I legitimately don't know what's going on in Brain Dead Yue. So I am really hoping that Nezu has caught wind of this and he is on his way right now. Because if these people are right, if these civilians are correct that there are no security cameras in this area, I have to question how civilians have higher observational skills than Nezu's surveillance skills. It's just, the author is just setting himself up for like wondrous things. I think we are reaching a point now where to make some things to work, people have to be dumbed down. And I think Nezu's about to take like a real good thrashing when it comes to his intellect. Anyway, we then go into Toru saying, I had to wonder why you haven't smiled once since Midoriya came back to us. We haven't seen Aoyama. Between those chapters, between the time Izuku came back and now, we haven't seen Aoyama. Aoyama, like Hagakure, wasn't there to really greet Izuku, so we really don't know. I haven't seen Shoji smile either, so I really can't say what's going on here. The author then goes into expositionary dialogue just to explain what's going on. We find out everything up to Kamino. Aoyama's been pulling it off, and then we have the Aoyama face. Oh, and 1 second, just in case you notice a skip in the footage. Okay, we're back. Sorry, just had to do something. Anyway, Aoyama page. Yeah, this was the Aoyama reveal. Yeah, you know, I'm looking at the page now, and it still doesn't really evoke a lot of feelings in me. I think it's just like Aoyama's also a little bit of a goofy character design. He's just so sharp. He has so many sharp features. Anyway, at this point, I remember something that I was talking to. It was Jason Thomas. We were talking about one of the art exhibit images of Aoyama and like a monster coming in through the walls. And at the time, you know, a lot of people were pointing out, oh, yo, Aoyama's a traitor. And, you know, I heard that, and I just wanted to believe that it was just anxiety. But what can you really do? Turns out that image was indicative of his pressure and him being the traitor. So, way to go, Horikoshi. At that point, though, it is worth saying that his strategy for Aoyama was really to have Aoyama hidden within the forest. Like, well, he was a tree within the forest. Hide the tree in the forest. That was the strategy that he did. Especially when you look at Toru being the bait and switch. It was really an issue of he gave so many traitor options that he hid the traitor within the many traitor options. Okay, so next is where things get a little tricky with what exactly has Aoyama done. In the first panel, you have the parents saying, well, you told them about the forest training camp. Nobody was the wiser. Great. And we know that he's honored every request ever since he started school here. And also, just to point out, you know, it's unfortunate the way the parents are pressuring him. But this is how All For One plays the game. So good on All For One for being so good at manipulating people. Alright, the parents continue and they're pointing out like it's too late to go back. Okay, that's fine. They're in despair, so that makes sense. Then you have Toru. Toru is the one that puts together USJ and the training camp. Now, just to point this out, there's a panel here of Izuku on the floor. Toru never actually saw these scenes, so it's a little bit questionable what were being shown. But I think the author didn't really have any other panels that were, you know, iconic for that particular arc. Anyway, after that, we have a flashback. We have the justification that his parents wanted him to have a happy life. We have the thing that Aoyama was scared of being different. That's okay. That makes sense. The parents wanted to help him fit in, and we also find out that okay, no, they actually regret it. Like if they had a second chance, they would not have done this. So at page 12 is where things start picking up the pace a little bit. Toru needs to go find a teacher, and again, I do hope a teacher shows up. And then we have Aoyama's speech. This monologue is really just here for the readers. There's actually no reason for him to say a good chunk of this out loud. So we find out he had to play his part right to avoid suspicion during the early stages. Like, I don't know what part he's talking about really. I feel like Aoyama is Aoyama, but okay. Putting on a brave face to smother guilty conscience. Alright, I never really saw a brave face. I just saw Aoyama, but okay. Then the author is recontextualizing a panel that we saw way back when. So this panel occurs during Camino. When you're seeing it, it was mixed in with other kids also watching the scene. So when you're seeing this here, you know, when you initially saw it, the read would have been, oh man, these guys are just so concerned because All Might, their hero, is fighting. But now it's like, oh man, All For One is going down. I can't believe it, right? So that's the recontextualization there. That makes sense. And then you continue with the parents. So this is probably where I think the parents, like, or the mother is extremely icky, where she says, forgive us, forgive your loving parents. Now, throwing in that loving there is a little bit manipulative because she is still trying to say that she is a good person. She is still trying to say this is happening because we love you. It makes her look bad, and I'm really happy about something the author did later because I think this is one of those parts where I did lose any sympathy for her, because at this point it feels like she's blackmailing Aoyama out of fear. Anyway, we then have Aoyama establishing he wanted to protect his parents, which is establishing a heroic trait in Aoyama. So now you're in a position where, okay, Aoyama is a victim in a situation. This is how it's coming out. But, you know, chances are, even when it was Toru as a traitor, we would be in a situation where, yes, there was some kind of hand twisting going on. Anyway, we go into page 14. Where the parents are saying that they have to be saved by Aoyama, and then we have this wonderful face for the mother here. So I actually thought this was really good, just because it's an ugly looking face, and I liked it being revealed here, just because like at that point, I think the things that were happening here were very ugly. Even if she's having like a little bit of a mental breakdown here, still a very ugly thing for Aoyama to have to go through. We then go into page 15, where we now know Izuku knows everything that Hagakure heard, so she has played her role here. We have the parents, well, we have the mother trying to downplay it, and then we have Aoyama speaking about how he was the only one who couldn't say a word to him. And then he says, in that moment only I was silent. Okay, just to do the recap here, Toru never said anything to Izuku during the moment that hand is taken. Toru only says something to Izuku, and when she does say something, it's like, yo, we have a cool base. So let's just really reconsider that line there. the author is framing it because he wants to create the situation. But what ultimately ends up happening is that because he wanted to keep suspicion on Toru, remember, Aoyama and Toru were a unit during this segment. Also, Shoji was mysteriously not involved in certain panels. The author, in trying to keep things vague, in trying to make it still plausible that Toru was the traitor in order to make this little bait and switch a little bit more effective, he created a situation when Aoyama's talking here, only I was silent. Toru can fit in there. The only time Toru talks to Izuku is to tell him that the UA wall is pretty badass, essentially. Anyway, moving on, we have Aoyama having a note in his hand. I don't know what that's referring to. Maybe it's like back during that one time that Aoyama and Izuku were hanging out. We then move on to Izuku saying, "You've been looking so gloomy lately. Only you. I thought something must be wrong." So this is stuff that Izuku has seen post coming back. And unfortunately, the author didn't show it to us, because if the author showed it to us, we would have known that Aoyama was a traitor even more. So this is, again, the author, a little bit of a trick in that he's having the characters act on information that only they are really privy to. Again, the information in this case being things after Izuku arrives. Okay, and then we move into a relatively critical panel here, where he says, "At USJ and then in the forest, each time I led them to us." So this is where things get a little bit critical, because this is the first time that Aoyama attributes USJ to him. And he's saying that he led them to us, but I'm wondering what exactly does that mean, especially with the context of USJ, like leading them to us. Like, Aoyama might have a tracker in his belt because he always has to wear the belt. He's the kid with the special permission to wear that belt. What I'm thinking is there more going on with USJ? And the reason I bring that up is because in chapter 13, Kurogiri says, "According to the schedule I received," someone gave him the schedule, and we talked about this on the live stream, but the next big question here, and this is one of the things leading me to think that there's more traders involved, is how did Aoyama get the schedule? Because if you're saying that Aoyama is the only trader, now you have to start answering questions like, how did he know where to find the schedule? And remember, one of the things with Toru is that Toru was the trader because she wasn't there during the voting segment, but Aoyama was. So what it comes down to is, if Aoyama's the only trader, how did he get into the staff room? How did he know where to find the schedule in the time that it took for the kids to freak out? If the schedule was digital, how did he get into the computers without having a password? Was he given tools to be able to do it? Also, how did he bypass the many security cameras in UA to be able to go and get it? Because even if you have the kids freaking out, UA still has multiple security cameras. I would believe that they have security cameras in their staff room. They must have they have robots running around just monitoring the entire area. Was UA really without security cameras in critical areas? I don't know, but like, the UA also has a significant technological presence. I think it'd be important for them to have security cameras, especially if an accident happens and they need footage to prove that they were not in the wrong here legally. But once we go into Aoyama, you have many questions you need to answer, and you need to answer specifically how the staff schedule gets into Kurogiri's hands. How does Aoyama get it, and how does he get it out of the school? And for this one, I feel like it requires some technical logical know-how, but we need to see. Anyway, he says, I am a despicable villain, and then you have the author recontextualizing the cheese, saying, "I know everything," or whatever it was that he did way back when. Anyway, here we are. That is the end. What do I think is going to happen next? Well, look, Aoyama might blow up. There might be a lot of things going on right now, honestly. Aoyama's eyes have stopped twinkling, which is unfortunate. But yeah, you know, now with Aoyama, I'm really look, I think Izuku's going to redeem him. Like, the kid's a victim, right? It's just that now I guess next week is going to be interesting, because we're going to see what can All For One do to someone that's just screwed him over. Like, will All For One blow him up the way he did Nagant? I mean, everything looks like he could possibly do that. So Aoyama's dead. Well, he's not dead, man. Actually, if I was Izuku, I would let Aoyama blow up and then just rush him to Central Hospital, because we know these explosions can be survived. And since Nagant hasn't blown up again, it looks like the blow up only happens once. So you know, a little bit pragmatic, but maybe a little bit too rough. I think next week's going to be a lot of talking. And I think ultimately they're going to figure out a way to save Aoyama. Like, ideally, the teachers zoom in there right now, and Aizawa is staring down Aoyama and prevents whatever thing is going on with All for One from taking root. So, yeah, last week I said that the author had nothing but potential. And this week I feel like, yeah, I think this is going to be cool. I saw that Wet Despair was saying that people are upset because now that the traitor's been revealed, the traitor won't be able to do anything that they wanted the traitor to do. And it's like, well, not yet. I mean, there might be multiple traitors here. So let's just be patient. Let's see what happens next week. Maybe next week Toru comes out of nowhere and shanks Izuku and be like, ha ha ha, I was a traitor too, dick. But we'll have to see. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for watching. That was my review. I gotta run and do more stuff. Till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.